How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be talking about Love, Death, and Robots. Love, so it kind of fits in with February, right? But anyway, Love, Death, and Robots, Volume 1 from 2019. This is produced by David Fincher and Tim Miller, but features a ton of different writers and directors and production companies because this is an anthology show. Each episode is different. These are shorts, animated shorts, ranging from 6 minutes to 17 minutes. And even though these are animated, parents, this is an adult show. It's definitely geared towards adults. Don't let your kids watch it just because it's a cartoon. This is definitely for the older crowd. One thing that I didn't know about this going in, and I wish I had known earlier, is according to rumor, when this show was in its infancy, they were wanting it to be a show based on a heavy metal. For those of you guys who don't know, Heavy Metal is a comics magazine. It's fantasy and also geared towards adults, fantasy and sci-fi, and it was later made into 2 movies, which are pretty good, and you should probably check those out if you like this. I really wish it was able to keep its heavy metal IP, but apparently copyright, they couldn't get it, so they made it into its own show instead. But if it was heavy metal, I would have known what it is, and I would have checked it out day one. Personally, I was only kind of vaguely aware of this show. I saw the trailer, but it's really hard to cut a trailer for an anthology show, and I didn't really understand what it was about. It just looked like it was all over the place. And it wasn't until way later, this other YouTube channel, Minty Comedic Arts, did a video about heavy metal, and what she briefly referenced that this was supposedly going to be a heavy metal show, and that made me go, huh, I should probably check this out. So in turn, I'm checking this out in 2021, when the show came out in 2019, because I didn't really know what it was, and I wish I had checked this out sooner. But anyway, let's go ahead and talk about the feel of the show, what this show is like, and I guess I should cover first the thing that so many people seem to get hung up on with this show, and that is this show is geared towards adults. It's not safe for work, and it features several scenes of very intense violence as well as, adult, sexual situations. And that being said, was I shocked by this, or did it throw me for a loop? Not really. I guess with me, I watch way too many old-timey grindhouse movies, way too many weird Italian movies, and it doesn't really throw me off. It doesn't really shock me or surprise me. But it was surprising how much other people were really shocked by this, and I don't know, I guess because it was a cartoon or something. But yeah, a lot of people can't get over this, and actually, some people really don't like it. Some people say, they shouldn't make cartoons like this. This can't do that. That's offensive. And when you look at the thing that inspired this, heavy metal. Heavy metal came out in 1981. This came out in 2019. That's nearly 40 years later. And almost 40 years later, they're saying the same thing about this as they said about heavy metal. You shouldn't make a show like this. This is offensive. And it really makes you realize that maybe we haven't gone as far as we think we have. Maybe people are more or less the same now as they were back then. Maybe progress is an illusion. I don't know, maybe I'm taking it too far. But really, as long as we're adults watching this, and as long as we know what we're getting ourselves in for, we really should be able to watch almost anything. We should be able to make almost anything. And yes, I do throw in the word almost, because yes, there are lines, I get that. But even if something is uncomfortable or overly violent or something you don't like, that doesn't mean that, you shouldn't be allowed to make it. You need to have outlets for this stuff, have ways for people to think about other stuff through media, and I don't know, it's just surprising the backlash against some of these episodes. But I don't want to get on a soapbox. I don't want to say, make this whole video about that. The feel of the show, other than that, what's the show like? And that's really actually hard to explain. This is animation coming in from several different companies, several different people with different source material. Now, for those of you who are fans of Heavy Middle was primarily fantasy with a good chunk of sci-fi and a little hint of horror. This is much more almost entirely sci-fi with a good chunk of horror and just a tiny bit of fantasy. So if you're expecting the fantasy side of Heavy Middle, that's not in here. But the episodes are all over the place, coming from different people, different companies, and different stories that, brought about these ideas. You get things like werewolves joining the army, a story about yogurt that becomes sentient and takes over the world, and this story is actually narrated by Brain from Pinky and the Brain. You get farmers defending their crops in giant mech suits fighting aliens. You get a desert that was at one point a lake bed, and these people see the ghost of the marine life flying through the sky. Lots of different things. This is in all these episodes. And this is oddly both a strength and a weakness from this show. You see, in other anthology shows, if I were to watch, The Twilight Zone, I would know what to expect, what it feels like, because a Twilight Zone episode feels like a Twilight Zone episode, a Tales from the Crypt episode feels like a Tales from the Crypt episode. But with this show, you never really know what to expect, but in turn, you get a bunch of freedom and a bunch of different ideas, but in turn again, not all these ideas are as great as others, and when you sit down to watch a new episode of this show, you really don't know if you're going to be in the mood for what you've seen or if you're going to like what you see, So, other than, the fact that they're all primarily sci-fi and they're all really not safe for work, adult-oriented, outside of that, the show doesn't have too big of an identity, but in turn it has lots of freedom, so I guess it is what it is. But you really see an example of this. The first episode I saw was 3 robots. Now I hear that Netflix has played with this show's orders, so that may not be the first one you saw. And 3 robots is pretty lighthearted and comedy, and then it shows me Beyond the Aquila Rift, which is pretty dark horror, and it was kind of a jarring jump to go from lighthearted comedy to dark horror. So yeah, that's kind of a thing with these being all over the place. You don't know what you're gonna get. Now, as far as animation style, I almost wish this was more all over the place. This has a heavy preference for 3D animation. There is a few 2D stuff, but it's definitely in the minority. But a ton of 3D, and out of this 3D, you get a lot of people doing photorealism, which I know a lot of CGI artists are excited for this stuff. Personally, when I see animation, I want to see stuff that I wouldn't necessarily be able to see in a live-action movie, and I like experimentation and style, and plus I have a feeling that a lot of this photorealism isn't going to look that great in 5 years, so... But again, it is what it is. People should be able to animate however they want, especially with a show that's as free as this. But you do get a wide variety. You get one that's cel shading and looks like a Telltale game, one that reminded me of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and a few surprising animation choices, which I'll get into when I talk about my favorite episodes, which let's go ahead and do this. I have 8 episodes that I wanted to say something about. These are my favorites, and they might not be your favorites. I feel like with this show, when I watched it, that half of the episodes were pretty good, solid, but not great, and, some were a little lower than that. But the other half were very good, things that I was really excited about. They stick with you. So half being pretty good and half being very good. There's no really bad episodes here. And if I didn't mention your favorite, go ahead and tell me your favorites in the comments. I I'd like to hear from you and see things from your perspective. But anyway, 8 ones that I want to mention really quick. 3 Robots is about these robots that go to visit Earth after humans are extinct. It's a very funny comedy seeing things from their perspective, and it did get a few good laughs out of me. Beyond the Aquila Rift is about this guy. He comes out of hypersleep, and he finds that there's a miscalculation in his light speed, and he's in the middle of deep space at this repair station, and the whole thing turns into a really good, deep, dark horror movie ending, and I really love just how dark and crazy this thing got. Ice Age is half live action, half animation. You get this couple, they moved into a new apartment, and one of them is played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and in their freezer, they find a little colony of people moving at a very extremely fast rate of speed, and they get to see the society grow up in their freezer. Now, this did remind me a little bit of that Futurama episode where Bender's floating through space and a little colony starts growing on him. But if you look at the credits, they did actually, one of the little guys was a cameo from John DiMaggio, who voices Bender, so hey, they acknowledged it, and it's good to see Bender again, so that's fun. Sucker of Souls, you get this sort of a old Indiana Jones-looking ruin, and the guys in there accidentally awaken Dracula. Of course, it's this big, monstrous version of him. It's a cool fight for survival, and you feel like these people are barely making it each time. Plus, this is a cool 2D art style. Up next, The Witness. The Witness has what I think is probably the best art. It's kind of similar to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, where it mixes 2D and 3D really well, and you get some nice bright colors, and they do things like write in words into, someone closes the door, slam. This one is about a girl and a guy on buildings across the street from one another. The girl sees the guy murdering someone, and it turns out the person he murdered is a copy of this girl. The two get into a big, long chase scene, and it's really fun. Now, the middle of this does feature a club scene that is among the most explicit in the show, so if you're not a fan of that, you may not like this episode, but best art in the series, best animation style. Up next, Lucky 13. This rookie pilot, because she's a rookie, has to fly the worst ship, number 13, and there's all these legends about how lots of people don't make it back if you use that ship, and it's kind of the bad one, the haunted one. But she forms a special bond with this ship, and I felt it was a really good story. Up next, Blind Spot. Probably the second best animation in the show. Very anime reminiscent, again, combining it's 3D, but with lots of 2D elements and lots of cool, big, blocky neon shapes. And this one's about cyborgs trying to rob a road train, so that is really cool. Tons of crazy action. The last one, Zuma Blue. This is really fun. This is about an artist in the future trying to find meaning. And there's a fun twist on his character at the end that really makes you feel for this guy, and it's really unforgettable. Plus, there's some, again, 2D. Really cool art style, reminiscent of Samurai Jack. Reminded me a little bit of Batman Beyond. Love the art, and love the characterization in this story. But anyway, those are my favorite episodes. I'm curious what you guys thought of this show and what your favorite episodes are. I found it was very good, but kind of uneven and all over the place. Plus, I would prefer more 2D art, and I'm not a big fan of photorealism, but overall, very good. This did get a second season that's coming out soon, I hope. So I'm going to be looking forward for Volume 2. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You're really helping the channel out. I'll put a relevant playlist down here at the bottom if you guys want to see more of my stuff. Other than this, I do primarily horror movies, so if that sounds like something you're interested in, I'd recommend sticking around. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Relevant playlist on the bottom. Have a good day.